Hi, this is Steve with Decware. Today I want to introduce you to a concept that I discovered developing amplifiers in the very early days of Decware. I call it the fidelity versus power curve. It looks like this, at least to most people. It's a linear blue line that goes up steadily with power. But this is wrong. The actual fidelity versus power curve looks like this, with the red line instead of the blue. You can see the golden zone is in yellow. This is where the best sound exists for hi-fi playback. The peak is the lowest power instead of the highest. How is that possible? You see, with two high current watts coupled to a load through a high quality transformer, you only need two tubes, two resistors, and one capacitor in the signal path. There is no negative feedback, and there is so few parts that the immediacy and transparency that comes through is unmistakable and undeniable. It's something that once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Literally, this 2 watts of Class A power is done with 2 resistors and 1 capacitor, 2 tubes, and 1 transformer in the signal path, and that's it. When you want 4 watts or more, guess what happened? You need more parts. When the parts count is this low, adding more is a massive percentage of increase. The more parts you place in the signal path, the more parts you are placing between you and the music. It's really just that simple. With the popularity of the original Zen amp taking off in the late 90s, there was more and more pressure to have increased power, so people could hear this Deckware sound without buying new, more efficient speakers. As we developed higher power amps with the condition they sound as good as the original, we quickly found out how difficult that actually is. This is because as you make more power, you need either paralleled output tubes or larger output tubes that require a larger voltage swing to drive them, and that requires another stage of amplification. So suddenly you have twice as many parts in the signal path. There is a sweet zone in there where it is easiest to achieve nirvana using appropriate loudspeakers and sources. It is the yellow zone in the chart. It is because of the fidelity versus power curve that I realized early on not to even attempt to make anything higher than 60 watts, because I knew the Deckware sound would be impossible. Some of you are screaming OTL amplifiers, and believe it or not, running tubes in parallel never sounds as transparent as a single tube. It has been my experience that if you must run tubes in parallel, it is best to do it in odd numbers, 3 tubes instead of 4 as an example. Remember, even with precision matched tubes in an OTL that requires lots of output tubes in parallel to get the impedance down, over time, if even one tube drifts, the transparency begins to suffer. Then there's negative feedback. Most OTL amplifiers will have plenty of it to help lower the output impedance of the amplifier so it can couple more power into the loudspeaker. Staying within the power range outlined in the chart will keep you out of trouble. Trouble is when you spend too much and don't get the results you wanted. It is well worth your investment to purchase speakers that perform well in this Goldilocks zone that starts at 2 watts. For small room speakers that measure in at 94 decibels per watt are decent. Higher sensitivities are even better. 100 if you can find something that high that has smooth, warm sound is perfect. These speakers will have low moving mass, typically less than 20 grams, and will be many times faster than your typical 86 dB hi-fi woofer that often comes in closer to 80 grams. It's just physics. To have linearity, you have to have speed. Speed is how fast a driver can stop. Anyway, amps and speakers are a system. You have to look at both as one. So the fidelity versus power curve is what's behind the Deckware tagline. If the first watt sucks, why continue? That's our tagline because we know that adding more watts isn't the solution. If the first watt sucks, you can be absolutely certain that the rest will also suck. It's a given for those who don't know, due to the exponential nature of power in this context, where you have to double the power for every 3 decibels of increase. Even on high power systems, most of the listening is still done in the 1 to 2 watt range. Not to beat a dead horse, but speed is how fast a driver can stop. Focus on finding a speaker that is in the high 90s so that the woofer can stop and change directions without 500 watts and tons of negative feedback, also known as dampening, to control it. Your sound will open up, and you open the door for simpler, more transparent amplification that can get out of the way of the music in a most haunting way that's hard to imagine until you've heard it. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.